has the most money, the most power, whoever's backed by a stronger government or Western governments. But the point is that he's admitted that the Pakistani individual has openly admitted, yeah, we rigged the election. And if people are kind of smirking and laughing, well, look at Pakistan, they got rigged elections. Yeah, they do. So does Egypt and many other countries, not just in the Middle East, but all over the world. The elections are rigged. So for the Muslims in these Muslim countries, Pakistan included, that thinks that you're voting in a democratic process where your vote actually counts or matters, it doesn't. Just because this is maybe one of the few times that someone who has been caught and admitted to rigging the election, don't think that this is an isolated incident. This happens in every election, everyone that matters. Maybe some little random local election that doesn't really have much power or much sway, maybe, but any sort of major government type of election or with some real issues on the line or some real power to be had, it's rigged everywhere. So don't laugh at Pakistan as if they're the only ones. It's everybody. And that leads me to the next story, which is the People's Champ. Even the Muslims chant for some reason. The Muslims even decided that they were going to vote for Donald Trump. Which, here's your president, here's your champ. This is y'all's king. You know, the people who they voted for Biden, and then they got upset because Biden, bombed the Muslims and attacked the Muslims or do whatever. The same thing that Trump did before him, and the same thing that Obama did before him. It's the same thing. However, why the Muslims were tricked, or I shouldn't say tricked, why they were fooled. And I'll just say the only person who would vote in a democratic election in the United States or any Western country or any country that for that matter, but let's just stick to the United States. Any person who would vote for the president of the United States, either, especially a Muslim, either that person is incredibly ignorant, they're a fool, or they're a fool. And I'll give some people, maybe they're just ignorant. They just don't understand how this thing works. So they're jahil. They don't understand how it actually works. And I'm talking about for the president of the United States to vote for the president. Or they themselves are corrupt. There's only one or two. There's really no real in between. They just don't know any better. They're ignorant. They're a jahil, or they are corrupt. They've been corrupted by the system. They are voting and encouraging other people to vote because they have some benefit in who wins or not, but not necessarily because they think justice will be served or that they have any care about the Muslims or will do anything to support the Muslims. And this is case in point. Some Muslims are on record, and you can find the videos of them saying the reason why they didn't vote for Biden, the reason why they didn't vote for Kamala Harris, and why they voted for Trump, because Trump is about peace and he's going to stop the war in Gaza and he's going to do this. Here we go. Donald Trump says, this comes from documenting a precedent against Muslims. They have various channels. You can find them anywhere. But point is, Donald Trump says the U.S. Is committed to buying and owning Gaza. This is your king, your president. He said the U.S. is committed to buying and owning Gaza. Now, I was not aware that Gaza was for sale. And I'm pretty sure no one else did either. But here we are. Gaza is for sale. And Donald Trump says that the U.S. is committed to buying and owning it. Who are they going to buy it from? That's the next question. But anyway, I mean, that's what he says. Other thing is, Donald Trump says also that the Palestinians will have no right to return to the Gaza Strip under his forced displacement plan. So not only does he say he's going to buy it, from who? I don't know. Maybe he's going to buy it from Netanyahu. Maybe he's going to buy it from Israel. And they have no right to return. So if he's already saying they have no right to return, him even saying that he's going to buy it is a joke. He's not going to buy it. He's just going to take it, in which he can. And so the thing is, I mean, this is who you voted for, He said in the quote here, President Trump has committed to buying and owning Gaza Strip and relocating the 2 million people living there, despite global condemnation. Newsflash, the United States does not care about global condemnation about anything. They don't care. They never have. He told reporters that he might allow Middle East countries to be involved in rebuilding parts of the territory and that would make sure Palestinian refugees would live beautifully. Quote, I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza. As far as us rebuilding it, we may have to give other states in the Middle East to build sections of it. Other people may do it through our auspices, but we're committed to owning it taking it and making sure that Hamas doesn't move back. So this is the president that a lot of Muslims voted for this time around. And the same president before that they voted for from the other side. It's the same thing, same story every time. There's nothing really different. This also ties into that, which the Trump administration backs big arms sales to Israel, defying Congress. So this is from Reuters, which it said U.S. President Donald Trump's administration announced on Friday that it had approved military sales to Israel worth $7.4 billion, despite Democratic lawmakers' request that the sale be paused until he received more information. This is a joke. It's a joke because no Democratic lawmakers really care. They're all in cahoots. They actually want the money to go to Israel. That's what they've been doing. They have been supporting and financing Israel, regardless of which president is in office. I don't know why the Muslims can't seem to understand that. These voting loving Muslims, for some reason, you don't understand. And I don't know, some of you have just got here to the United States or in the West. Some of you have been here for generations. But for whatever reason, you love to vote, even though they do the same things. And we've been saying this over and over again. Obama, Clinton before him, whoever was before him, was it Bill Clinton or George Bush? Before George Bush, it was Bill Clinton. Then George Bush, then Bill Clinton, and then who was after that? Obama and Biden, Trump now. Whoever it is, they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. This is their plan all along. And for us to think for 1 second that protesting, and I'm not a person that says protesting is not allowed. Yeah, it's allowed, but it's a complete waste of time. Boycotting, maybe, I mean, best thing you do is probably try to avoid paying some taxes. But the thing is that you're protesting in the streets and calling up your congressman and all this. It's like this. For instance, say we have 3 classmates, me, Bakr, and Zaid. Me, Bakr, Zaid. Bakr starts to fight me and beat me up. He's beating me up and Zaid is watching. Now, I think Zaid is my friend. And obviously now I know that Bakr is not my friend, but I think Zaid is my friend. Zaid does nothing. He watches Bakr beat the mess out of me. Now why? This is an example of what all the countries around Palestine are doing. They're watching them get beat up. And any help that's offered, they kind of and they watch all this happen. Why? Because just like Bakr is beating me up and Zaid is watching, Zaid is either more friends with Bakr than me. He's more allied with Bakr than me. And that is the situation. Regardless of we're going to say Muslim country or whether the rulers necessarily don't get it, we don't need to get into any of that. Just know that when one country or person or entity is being bombarded, killed, slaughtered, and others are watching, they're either friends with the person who's doing it, right? Or the country. They're more friendly with them, or they're so afraid that they may be next to get beat up that they won't do anything. And they realize that, hey, we're actually powerless. We're too weak to actually help you. So it's better that just you get beat up than all of us get beat up. Which one is it? Are they more friendly and allied and partners with the one beating up the weaker one? Or is it that they know that they can't do anything, so they just don't want to get beat up as well? The bottom line is that the Muslims in general, Gaza in particular, people there are too weak, and the strong are beating them. So we ask Allah to give them, give us the strength. But we should know that 100% certain, protesting to the one who is funding and giving the arms and the money and everything and selling them weapons to do all these things, you think protesting to those people is going to make a difference? It's a fool. You're wasting your time. It's a complete waste of time, and the Muslims should just completely stop doing that at all. There's other things you can do, and that's a story for another day. We should know and understand fully by now. It doesn't matter which president is in office. It doesn't matter if you protest. You're protesting to the friends and the aiders and the betters and the supporters of the people who are doing wrong. That's like me, me saying, there's a little kid over there that needs to be beat up, and I tell my son, hey, go beat him up. And then when my son goes to beat him up, you come and complain to me and say, hey, your son, beat up this little kid. I mean, if I sent him and I trained him and I taught him how to do it and sent him to do it, would it make sense for you to complain to me? Now, maybe you didn't know, but once you know that it was me that actually trained and equipped and armed him to go and beat up the other person, complaining to me is just a waste of time. I might be like, oh, what happened? But really, I'm laughing in your face. I'm laughing behind your back for sure. And definitely not going to stop until whatever I want is going to, be done. So it obviously looks like they just want the land and they're going to, I heard they're going to turn it into resorts or whatever else. But it's a lesson for the Muslims. Anyway, last story. Last story. My good friend Yasir Qadhi, may Allah, may Allah bless him. However, I thought this tweet or post on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, it was kind of sad. It was kind of sad actually. And I hope that, and I say this by saying I hope they're successful. I really do. I hope they're successful in this project. And what's the project? Basically, is the Epic Ranches, and basically they're trying to build a community. Now they haven't said it's a Muslim community at all. At least not from this post here. But I'll just read the post, which says, and announcing the launch of Epic Ranches, a housing opportunity open to anyone who wants a home next to Epic City, open to non-Americans as well. The ambitious project is like no other. We are building an entire community from scratch. Islamic schools, college, masjid, retirement home for elderly, including assisted living, clinics, retail shops, and more, all within walking distance, surrounded by a loving, safe community in a neighborhood of friends and family. Limited plots available. Now that sounds nice and sweet to the untrained eye and ear. And I tell the Muslims all the time when I have the opportunity to speak to Muslims, especially Muslims who are first, second, or third generation immigrants, or some people who have just got here within the last few years or whatever, and they're really thinking of settling down and having a slice of the American pie and living the American dream. And I try to tell them in a soft way, a way that it'll get across to them, but I don't know if it's sinking in or not. But there's no such thing as the American dream. That's only for some people. It's not for immigrants. It's not really for minorities either. And I say that it's not that you cannot have a good life and live comfortably here. You can, but don't have too high of hopes. And this is something that I think is, and I hope is successful. I really do. Wallahi, I do. But I've seen this story before many times over the history. And I say the history of immigrant Muslims, whether they're from the Asian subcontinent or from Africa or from the Middle East or whatever, it doesn't matter. The history of the history of the indigenous Americans of African descent in this country, their history is a mirror image of the future and the present of the immigrants from other countries in a lot of ways. Because what they think is that whole thing where, oh, you just work hard and, have American values and, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just obey the law and, you'll be fine. You'll be able to, live long and prosper and do whatever you want to do. It's really not true. It's not true. And so I'll go through this real quick and then I'll give some examples of what I mean. But first of all, when they talk about this, when Yasir Qadhi is mentioned in this place, right? He says one thing that stood out to me is when he said, it's open to anyone who wants a home next to Epic City, in parentheses, open to non-Americans as well. Now, this sounds like an interfaith community to me. It sounds like an interfaith community. And one thing that was prevalent in the African American or the Africans in America or the Americans or the indigenous Africans in America, however you want to say it, is that every movement, every chance and opportunity for self-betterment for themselves, within themselves, by themselves was infiltrated, co-opted, and destroyed by the American government. Every single one. Every single one was infiltrated, co-opted, and destroyed. So when you say, well, interfaith community, they are definitely going to, at the very least, have people who are FBI. You might as well just make one of those plots for the FBI, just to be there and sit there and just to, not just to look for terrorists, but to cause trouble, because this is one of the things that FBI does. They cause trouble. And like I said, that's a story for another day. But point is, that is what has happened to the African Americans, and it's something that will definitely happen to the Muslims, whether you're doing anything wrong or not. They're going to have a presence there. Just to make sure that the interest of the American government is upheld, and that's going to be first and foremost. So this sounds like an interfaith community. When you say it's open to, when you say it's open to non-Americans, that's code for it's open to non-Muslims. That's what it sounds like to me. But Allah knows best. It doesn't say, well, this is, we're looking for Muslims. It looks like anyone with some money can buy a place there, and that seems problematic for if you're trying to make a community in which Islam is propagated and pushed, to publicize or to advertise that it's open to any and everyone is a little well, you're gonna get what you ask for. So and Yasir Qadhi, he's Indian, but and in seeing some of the people involved, and I don't know everybody that's involved, but I think the likelihood that it will become some sort of Desi stronghold or Indian subcontinent, hood, so to speak, is high, and I think that's highly likely what may happen, and that's a better case than that. That's better than it just being an interfaith hodgepodge of you got some just random Americans, Christians and atheists and just liberals and all types of people who are up in there because they think some things about Islam are nice, that they're just and so that kind of defeats the purpose of even building the community. So I think it just being a heavily Indian Muslim, Pakistani Muslim, Bangladeshi Muslim community is better than that first option. But I think that's probably likely what the majority of will be made up of, and there's reasons for that. But you know, but, but and I tell you, if it truly is an Islamic community that is made up of Muslims who want to practice and live an Islamic life inside their homes, outside their homes, their community, then being called, over the loudspeakers throughout the neighborhood and all that thing, where the schools are closed on Fridays and Saturdays, and it's closed for Eid, and everything that you would see in where the Sharia is practiced in a Muslim country that you would see there. If you try to do that, subhanallah, then expect heavy opposition from the locals, from the surrounding communities, from the government itself eventually. And I'll just say, if the immigrant Muslim community thinks that, this grand idea of, what, we're a little bit different from the majority of Americans. We have a different kind of set of values. We look a little bit different. We kind of want our own thing in our own space, our own area. We'll do our own thing, and let them be them, and we'll have our own little piece of heaven here, and we'll just grow and raise our families the way we want, live the way we want, and worship the way we want, and everyone will live happily ever after. If you think that is just going to happen without any opposition, I call your attention to the town of Rosewood, which was, I believe, like in 1923, which was a group of former slaves, people of African descent, who had a flourishing town that was, perfectly fine on its own. Long story short, they burned it down and killed the people there, and it doesn't exist anymore. And also, you have Tulsa, Oklahoma. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a very strong and vibrant community of African Americans, prosperous, doing their own thing, had their own exclusive place or whatever. The people who looked like them and acted like them and worshiped like them and wanted to be around them, because at that time there was segregation and people didn't want to be around each other or whatever. They were doing their own thing, minding their own business, progressing on. What happened? What happened is they carpet bombed them and they killed them, and the city was burned down. Of course, Tulsa is a place now, it's been rebuilt or whatever, but it's not an African American stronghold like it was. So these are things that could be gone into much, much more detail. But the point is this: every time any group tries to set themselves aside and apart from the mainstream American way of living, practicing, worshiping, marrying, divorcing, money, banking, whatever you want to call it, you try to do that. The history and the sunnah of the American government just does not allow it. So I hope it's successful. I want it to be successful, but Allah knows best. What will happen. But I don't want the Muslims anywhere to be naive about the reality of the situation. It's just not very likely. It's just not very likely for it to happen. But of course, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Allah is the one who controls all, and if Allah wants it to be successful, it will be, and I hope it will be. But we also have to understand, situation, the reality of the situation on the ground, and what actually does happen and take place, and we should be prepared for it. Hope they're successful, but don't be naive, Muslims. That's all the stories I got for today. May Allah make it easy for us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun.